Remember when I said that the last patch might be the final update for March? Well, about that. Victor spent 24 hours living amongst the dumpsters, and now he's back to being unkillable once more. Graves has been buried 2 foot shallow as Valve didn't have time to bury her 6 foot deep after Yoshi revoked her instant cast army of ghouls with grasping hands. Sorry summoner build enjoyers, it's just the one ghoul now. Street Brawl will now allow you to reach max ability point upgrades in every skill by round 5, so Brawl is about to get even more hectic. All this and more in what is surely the last balance patch for March now, right? As always, you're watching Patch Notice here on Dead Air, and I'm your host, Jacky. Myself and Daisy are currently away hosting the main stage of DreamHack Birmingham, so apologies for the slight delay in upload this time around. But without further ado, let's kick off this episode of Patch Notice on the road. Straight out the gate, we've seen multiple sweeping changes to the entire cast of Deadlock, with some pretty substantial nerfs to the recently buffed heroes, alongside revisions to heroes that have not been touched in a while to try and encourage more skill point investment variety, and some nerfs to the more problematic heroes. Up first, Bebop is once again back in the notes, however it's just the one change for the scrap golem of the cursed apple. Bebop's base health regen was increased, going up from 1.5 to 2.5, a nice self-sustained buff to allow Bebop to try and get back into the fight more regularly, with some brawler Bebop builds gaining popularity with the regen on uppercut. We'll see if this moves the needle at all for Bebop enjoyers. Clashing with the golem though is our next hero, Calico. Calico had one more adjustment to Leaping Slash in this update, however it's not a nerf to its scaling or bounty following the AP tweaks, it's actually a slight buff to the hero's base damage output, an increase of 10 damage, up from 50 to 60. From Cats to Coney Island, Celeste is the next star of the update. It's 2 nerfs here for Celeste. Valve have reduced her base health regen from a rate of 2 down to 1, and then gone ahead to slightly tone down the tier 3 duration increase of her silence from her barrier breaking on Dazzling Trick. So although avoiding burst DPS on the barrier is still the ideal outcome, if you're forced to break the barrier, you'll have a marginally quicker window of recovery from her silence now. As her barrier breaks away, Celeste faces off against the doorman, a bountiful collection of buffs here for the doorman fandom, carpenters I believe you're called. Callbell has seen a few improvements as they continue to play around with the ability. It will now have a 5% increase on its slow when inside the aura emitted from the bell, going up from 30% to 35%. And similarly, the base bell radius also went up from 5 meters in radius to 6 meters. Additionally, we saw 10 meters of radius added to the doorway distance following the nerfs that we had in the previous update. Lastly then, it's 2 changes to Luggage Cart, with it now dealing a bonus 75 extra damage on collision with a wall at the tier 2 AP upgrade. This is alongside scaling with Spirit at a ratio of 0.6. However, the tier 3 cart stun duration increase was marginally toned down from 1.5 seconds to 1.25 seconds to add more leeway for outplaying following a stun. And that opens the door to Graves, and it's a big round of kneecapping for Graves this patch following her recent buffs. Firstly, the spirit scaling damage increase for Grasping Hands had its growth rate brought down from 1.9 to 1.6, with the tier 3 AP upgrade also being tweaked. The new AP upgrade added the ability to summon 2 shambling ghouls on cast in the last patch, however it was proving very oppressive for lane shove and overwhelm with Echo Shard summoner builds blowing up lobbies. So Valve have tweaked it now to only spawn the 1 ghoul. This does seem more reasonable to me. However, you will now also reduce the cooldown of your Grasping Hands with the tier 3 AP upgrade. Borrowed Decree, her ultimate itself, was also tweaked, with Ghoul HP per boon going down from 200 plus 12 per boon to instead be 180 plus 8 per boon, so Ghoul HP growth is on the decline. And finally, the Ghoul's damage was reduced from 150 to 135. No changes to Jar of Dead this time, but if you'd like to become a Deadhead yourself and have your name featured in Patch Notice, then join our YouTube members program today. Next, bouncing back into the patch notes for the first time in a long time, it's Holiday. Now, she's seen some unique gameplay changes here. You'll now be able to allow teammates to benefit from Bounce Pad's increased air control and stomp damage, opening the door for some cool plays within your team comp and extra engage potential with Bounce Pad/kit interplay for other heroes. Very cool. Additionally, the cooldown reduction on headshot for Crackshot's tier 3 AP upgrade was increased from -4 seconds on hero headshots and -2 seconds on NPCs to now be -6 seconds of cooldown reduction on hero heads and -3 on NPCs. So potentially it might slightly encourage different builds with Holiday and open up some more options to aid her team. And don't forget, if you'd like our YouTube videos to bounce right into your homepage, then subscribe to Dead Air and be notified whenever we upload. Meanwhile, burning his way into the patch next, it's the bartender of Jezebels, Infernus. Tweaks here to Afterburn, both flat increases on the DPS, with its base DPS being up from 12 to 14, alongside the tier 1 increase going up from +14 to +16, allowing a bit more damage on the old handgun again, following Dash Furnace's surging popularity. And with that huge increase to explosion lifesteal in the last patch on his ultimate, Concussive Combustion, Valve have pushed it even further, now granting you 15% more lifesteal on the ult at the tier 2 AP upgrade. This has gone up from +85% to +100%. Bear in mind this was previously at +65 not too long ago. And lastly, he'll be able to cast that ultimate 10 seconds more frequently now, with the cooldown reduction on the tier 2 AP upgrade also being increased to now grant a -75 second cooldown reduction. From fire we move to ice, as Kelvin, aka Little Johnny Frostbite, had a couple of nerfs to Frost Grenade as it's back in the headlines once again. The spirit scaling has gone down from 0.8 to 0.7, alongside the tier 3 ability point upgrade damage spirit scaling also dropping down by 0.01. This is down from a ratio of 0.9 to 0.8. However, as the Oathkeeper beckons, let's see what's changed on Lady Geist. Her gun fall-off range was reduced from 20 meters to 52 meters to instead now be 17 meters to 58 meters. A reduction with the ever-increasing popularity of Gun Geist. Although really, since the major shake-up patch a few weeks ago, it's her spirit damage and options to get away with crazy burst on ability spam due to the reduction of self-damage per cast that's opened up many avenues for high damage and quick spirit nukes that should probably be the focus on playstyle in my eyes. Either way though, they did nerf one part of her kit that's been super strong, and that's her life drain. This has been melting through players as Valve have gone in and toned down the spirit scaling on it from 0.536 to 0.43, with the tier 3 increased scaling being buffed to compensate somewhat for that later damage spike from +0.3 scaling to +0.4. Moving on from Geist to Mcginnis, after her ultimate was pushed back to even below pre-buffed values, we saw Turret Mcginnis has been back on the rise. So, no changes to those bad boys in this patch. Instead, it's just duration changes. You'll now be getting an extra 0.5 seconds of duration on Medicinal Spectre's tier 3 duration, allowing some leeway to shove or potentially save your mates in a pinch, with it going from +1 second to +1.5 seconds. This is alongside Wall's duration also going up by 0.5 seconds, increased from 5 seconds to 5.5 seconds. Moving past the walls though, we arrive at our next hero, Mirage. Mirage has been super meta right now, thriving in the current Deadlock landscape. He has been hit with some tweaks and nerfs here though. We've seen the Fire Scarab health steal per second brought down from 10 to 9, alongside the tier 1 AP increase also going down from +8 health per second to +7. And finally, the ability Spirit Scaling was also scaled back from a growth rate of +0.23 to +0.17. However, Dust Devil was tweaked. Cooldown is up, being 4 seconds longer between casts now, at 36 seconds, increased from 32. Although you'll scale that back slightly with the tier 2 cooldown reduction also being tweaked, now be a minus 12 second cooldown reduction instead of minus 8 seconds. And on top of that, the silver lining is the tier 3 AP upgrade will grant an extra 0.3 seconds on the lift duration when knocking someone up with Dust Devil. Lastly, the spirit scaling ratio of Jin's mark that's proving very powerful right now was nerfed too. That's down from 0.44 to 0.38. Keep in mind this was 0.51 a few weeks ago. And up next, Rem makes an appearance. No nerfs though. Instead, it's the return of Unstoppable built into his kit on the tier 3 AP upgrade, granting him Unstoppable while channeling the ability. A big win for the sleepiest warrior in Deadlock. Valve clearly aren't sleeping on Silver's power level though. As Wolf form has been getting a lot of its power back, we've also now seen some rescaling of her human form damage. Bullet damage has been changed from a 5.5 plus 0.1206 scaling rate to now be 5.4 with a 0.124 scaling rate. Similarly, we see the cooldown of Slamfire being increased from 22 seconds to 25 seconds, with the tier 2 reduction being brought up to compensate from minus 7 seconds to minus 10 seconds, meaning you want to hit that tier 2 AP upgrade for quicker bursts of damage and to build up Lycan's Curse earlier. Reloading his gun next, it's Venator, with changes to combat melee-oriented gutshot builds, and slow down to the raw punch potential before you hit your tier 2 AP upgrade on gutshot. For the changes then, gutshot's wall stun has been reduced from 0.65 seconds to 0.6. That might not sound like a lot, but it will have heavy implications for early laning. You should now be able to parry a Venator in the window of time for a heavy melee at base level stun, so rushing tier 2 will become the meta, technically anyway, as mileage may vary as it's dependent on inputs of an instant parry from your opponents and your distance to a degree. The damage scaling was also tweaked from a ratio of 1 to 0.8, and we saw Consecrating Grenade have its impact damage scaling reduced from 1.2 to 1.0, so grenades and gut shots saw some slight nerfs here. Lastly then, it's Victor, who's picked himself up and put himself back together. His lifesteal was hard cut in his kit last patch, and the unkillable became killable. Now he's got his vigor back. The minus 30% lifesteal effectiveness was reverted with his health per boon going back to 46 to compensate. However, they did change his jumpstart debuff removal mechanic, as that was probably the bigger issue of the two and maybe the better way to balance him. You'll now no longer purge non-ultimate debuffs with jumpstart's tier 3 AP upgrade, but instead gain plus 50% debuff resistance alongside cutting durations of debuffs by 50% instead. And they also slimmed down the Aura of Suffering radius from 9.5 meters to 9 meters. So it's not exactly a win, but it is a different nerfed timeline. Feels like a monkey paw situation on this one for the Victor players. But with that Victor lifesteal based bombshell out the way, that's everything you need to know about for tonight's Deadlock update. Thanks for watching this special episode of Patch Notice on the road. Myself and Daisy will be home from DreamHack in a few days, and regular content will resume. If you're at the event though, do be sure to come and say hi. Of course, thanks so much to our amazing members, new and old, that support us here and help us make these videos. We really appreciate your patron deadheads. You're all wonderful people. And if you'd like to join them and be featured in these end credits of Patch Notice, become a YouTube member and join the Deadheads today. Right then, I've got a craving for some Deadlock, but that will have to wait until I'm back home to lock in. So let us know your thoughts on the patch down below, and we'll see you next time. Get back out there, Deadheads.